Picture this. You're 74 years old. You did everything right. You contributed to your 401k for 30 years. You didn't panic when the market dipped. You watched that balance climb to $500,000. And then a letter arrives from your financial institution reminding you about your required minimum distribution. You look at the number, about $20,000, and you think that's all I have to take out? Great, I'll keep the rest growing. Fast forward 10 years. You're 85 now. That account has ballooned to $800,000. And this year, the IRS wants $50,000 in a single year. You're suddenly in a tax bracket you never expected to be in retirement. And you're wondering how you got here when you thought you were playing it safe the whole time. That scenario is not hypothetical. A recent study from JP Morgan Chase looked at how retirees are actually using their retirement accounts, and what they found got a lot of attention. 84% of retirees who had already reached RMD age were withdrawing only the bare minimum from their accounts. And 80% of retirees who hadn't yet reached RMD age hadn't touched their accounts at all. Now here's the thing. For some of those people, that's a perfectly smart, deliberate strategy. For others, it's a slow-motion mistake, one that's costing them either in surprise tax bills down the road or in a retirement they're not actually living. So today, we're going to figure out which camp you're in and what to do about it. But first, let's make sure we're on the same page about what RMDs actually are, because this is one of those topics that sounds more complicated than it is. RMD stands for Required Minimum Distribution. It's the minimum amount the IRS requires you to withdraw from your traditional retirement account starting at a certain age. We're talking about accounts like traditional IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans, TSPs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs. Basically, any retirement account where you put in pre-tax dollars, you got a tax break when that money went in, and it grew tax deferred for years, sometimes decades. The IRS let that happen. But eventually they say, okay, you've let this money grow long enough without us collecting a dime. Time to start taking some out so we can tax it. The big exception is Roth accounts. With a Roth, you already paid taxes on the money before it went in, so the IRS doesn't require you to take distributions. That distinction matters, and we'll come back to it. Now, the age at which RMDs kick in has changed recently. The Secure 2.0 Act pushed the starting age to 73, and by 2033, it'll move again to 75. So if you're in your late 60s right now, you have a window here that's worth paying attention to. More on that in a minute. The math behind your RMD is straightforward. You take your account balance as of December 31st of the previous year, and you divide it by a life expectancy factor that the IRS assigns to your age. They publish these tables every year. That's it. That's the calculation. And if you skip it, the penalty is 25% of the amount you should have taken. If you catch the mistake and correct it within 2 years, they'll reduce it to 10%. That's still steep. So if you have an RMD, take it. That part isn't up for debate. Here's where it gets interesting and where that JP Morgan study starts to make more sense. The life expectancy factor the IRS uses doesn't stay the same. It shrinks as you get older, which means even if your account balance stayed flat, the percentage you're required to withdraw goes up every single year. Let me show you why that matters with real numbers. Say you're 75 and your traditional 401k is worth $500,000. The life expectancy factor at 75 is 24.6. Divide 500,000 by 24.6 and your RMD is about $20,325. That probably feels manageable. You can take that out, pay the taxes, and it barely disrupts your financial picture. But now let's say you only take that minimum every year. The account keeps growing because the market does well, and the amount you're withdrawing is less than what the account earns. 10 years go by. You're 85. The account has grown to $800,000. And now your life expectancy factor has dropped to 16. 800,000 divided by 16 is $50,000. That's your new RMD. That's not a gentle tap on the shoulder from the IRS. That's a shove into a higher tax bracket. And it happened precisely because you were trying to be conservative. This is the trap that nobody talks about. Taking only the minimum can feel responsible. It can feel safe. But if your account keeps compounding faster than you're drawing it down, you're not avoiding a tax bill. You're just postponing it and making it bigger. Now, I want to be really clear about something, because this is where a lot of financial content gets it wrong. Taking only the minimum is not automatically a mistake. For some people, it is exactly the right move. It depends entirely on why you're doing it. Let me introduce you to Margaret. Margaret is 76. She retired at 67 with a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, Social Security, and a small pension from her years as a school administrator. When she sat down with her financial advisor, they mapped out a withdrawal strategy together. The plan pulls from her Social Security and her Roth first, for everyday spending. Her traditional IRA, she only takes the RMD, and that's by design. By keeping her traditional IRA withdrawals at the minimum, Margaret stays in the 12% tax bracket instead of getting bumped up to 22%. She's not being timid with her money, she's being strategic with her taxes. She's traveling, she remodeled her bathroom last year, she's living her life. She just happens to be funding most of it from accounts that don't trigger a tax bill. That's the key. Margaret has multiple income sources and she's coordinating them. The RMD is in her budget. It's one piece of a larger intentional plan. This approach also makes sense if you're thinking about legacy. If Margaret's traditional ARA keeps growing and she eventually passes it on to her daughter will have 10 years to draw those funds down. And if her daughter is in a lower tax bracket than Margaret, which is likely since Margaret's combined income sources put her in a comfortable range, then those dollars get taxed at a lower rate. The family keeps more. And here's a bonus. If Margaret passes on her Roth IRA instead, her daughter pays zero taxes on those withdrawals. Nothing. That's a powerful piece of estate planning that doesn't require a trust or a lawyer. It just requires thinking ahead. So if you're someone with Social Security, maybe a pension, a Roth account, a brokerage account, and you're deliberately keeping your traditional account withdrawals to the RMD to manage your tax bracket, you're probably doing exactly the right thing. But now let me introduce you to Patricia, because Patricia's situation looks very different. Patricia is 73. She saved aggressively her entire career, 30 plus years as an office manager, maxing out her 401k contributions whenever she could. She was proud of that discipline, and she should be. She retired at 70 with about $600,000 in her traditional 401k. The problem is that account is essentially her only significant financial asset besides Social Security. When her first RMD kicked in, Patricia looked at the number and treated it like a budget. That's my spending money for the year, she told herself. So she skipped a trip to Oregon to see her grandchildren. She put off the kitchen renovation she'd been dreaming about for a decade. She kept her thermostat 2 degrees lower than she wanted it. She told herself she was being responsible. But here's what Patricia isn't seeing. She's not preserving wealth for a plan. She's hoarding out of habit. After 30 years of saving for someday, she can't flip the switch now that someday is here. She's still in accumulation mode, except there's nothing left to accumulate for. This is it. This is the life the money was supposed to fund. And the data backs this up. Study after study shows that retirement spending tends to decrease over time, not increase. Yes, medical expenses can go up. But overall, your early retirement years, your go-go years, as they're sometimes called, are when you're most active, most mobile, most interested in doing things. That's when you travel. That's when you renovate the house. That's when you say yes to the reunion trip or the birthday cruise. Then come the slow-go years, when you start pulling back a little, and eventually the no-go years, when health and energy limit what you're doing day to day, and expenses naturally drop. Which means if Patricia is restricting her spending to the bare minimum right now, in her early 70s, she's cutting back during the exact years when spending would give her the most life. She's shortchanging herself on the experiences she worked 30 years to afford. Not because she can't afford them, because she won't let herself. And on top of that, by leaving so much in her traditional account, she's setting herself up for exactly the tax bomb we talked about earlier. Larger and larger RMDs in her 80s, when she has less energy and fewer ways to use the money, but a bigger tax bill attached to it. That's the real dividing line here. It was never about whether you take only the minimum or more than the minimum. It's about whether that decision is intentional or accidental. Margaret is intentional, Patricia is on autopilot. Here's a way to think about it that I find helpful. The RMD table was designed as a tax mechanism. That's it. The IRS created it to make sure they eventually collect taxes on money that's been growing tax-free. It was never meant to be a retirement spending plan. Using your RMD as your withdrawal strategy is like using the speed limit as your GPS. It tells you a constraint. It does not tell you where to go. The real question, the one that should come before any calculation, is this: what life do you want your money to fund? And then you work backward from there. So let me give you some concrete next steps based on where you are right now. If you're already taking RMDs, I want you to ask yourself one honest question: am I taking only the minimum by strategy or by default? If you have other income sources and you're deliberately managing your tax bracket, like Margaret, then you may be doing exactly the right thing. Keep doing it. But if your traditional account is your main source of retirement income and you're living smaller than you want to, it's worth running the numbers. Figure out what a slightly larger withdrawal would actually cost you in additional taxes, and then weigh that against what it would give you back in your life. Sometimes the answer is that an extra $5,000 or $10,000 a year costs you very little in taxes, but gives you back a lot in living. If you're 5 to 10 years away from RMD age, this is your window, and it's a valuable one. Look into Roth conversions. Every dollar you convert from a traditional account to a Roth now is a dollar that won't be part of your future RMD calculation. Yes, you pay taxes on the conversion, but you're doing it on your terms in a year you choose, potentially at a lower rate than you'd pay later. You should also be mapping out all of your future income sources right now: Social Security, pensions, Roth accounts, brokerage accounts, rental income, whatever applies to you, so that when RMDs do arrive, you have a strategy waiting for them, not the other way around. And for everyone, regardless of where you are, go use a free RMD calculator. NerdWallet has a solid one. Plug in your numbers and see what your RMD would be today. Then project it forward 5 and 10 years. That number might surprise you, and it's better to be surprised now than at 85. And if this feels like a lot to navigate on your own, talk to a tax-aware financial advisor. I say tax-aware specifically because this isn't just a retirement question, it's a tax planning question. The two are inseparable, and too many people treat them as if they're not. Now remember that woman we started with? 74, staring at that RMD letter, thinking she'll just take the minimum and let the rest ride? She's not wrong. But she's not right either. She's just not asking the full question. The number on that letter is not a plan. It's a floor. Your job, the thing that actually matters, is deciding what you're building on top of it. Maybe that's a lower tax bill. Maybe it's a legacy for your grandchildren. Or maybe it's a plane ticket to go see them this summer. The money was never the point. The life was always the point.